Hello and welcome to this book review. My name is Rich Ryan, one of the founding members here at the Obstacle Racing Collab. Today we review Mat Fraser's debut book called Hard Work Pays Off. My friend and fellow coach Josh Reed joins me and we talk about some of the key takeaways from the book and if you should read it or if you should skip it. So hit us with a subscribe if you want more content like this coming your way. And also if you wish to help support the members and athletes of the Obstacle Racing Collab and you want to support this type of content, you can go ahead and subscribe to our coffee code KO-Fi, basically our Patreon, or you can do a one-time donation. As a subscription member, you'll get access to these videos on a live basis with live Q&As and some discounts on programs and for some map reviews, which are kind of be our specialty going forward. So, all right, now that we're done with that, let's get to it. Okay, so we are here to review Hard Work Pays Off, Mat Fraser's debut book that he put out. So he is now an author as well as a five-time CrossFit champion, two-time runner-up, the most prolific CrossFit athlete that has ever existed. So this is his first book here. Josh, when you picked this book up, you got it almost right away. I actually had it on pre-order as well. What were your expectations of this book when you ordered it and before you even started reading it?
Yeah, I was expecting like an autobiography, like his story of how he got to where he was. I'm like, oh man, this guy's been through a bunch of shit, and now he's on top of the world. Let me read the story. Let me live vicariously through it and feel that and get amped up by it.
Yes. So I was actually thinking the opposite. I was expecting it to be more of like a training manual. I know that he's gone into coaching and the branding of the HWPO. That you'll see on his shirts and things like that. And I thought it was going to be more like a Daniel's formula or like a Joel Friel triathlon Bible type of thing, where he was going to be able to tell people how he trained and how they can kind of do that themselves. So it's funny that we actually had opposite ideas of what this book was actually going to be. Just based on the conversations that I had with some people, I thought that this was going to be more an insight on his coaching philosophies. So after you read the book, what were the takeaways and the reality of what you actually thought of what this book was to you?
Well, like I said, I was expecting more of an autobiography, and I knew we would talk about mindset and philosophy along the way. But what I actually ended up reading was some bullet points, some of his thoughts about what happened in the it was pretty succinct. He didn't go into a lot of details of his life, just basic stuff I did Olympic lifting, then I got into CrossFit, and here were some hardships, and then I was just littered with recipes, food recipes, and shitloads of workouts and routines that are specific to CrossFit.
So yeah, so when I opened the book, the chapters were strength, endurance, speed, coordination, mentality, and recovery. And then I thought, I was like, oh man, this is actually going to be a training book. And I didn't have the hard copy. I did the Kindle copy. And so I was excited. I was like, wow, he's actually done this because that's not anything that is really in the CrossFit space anymore at all yet. I've read Ben Bergeron's book. I've read a couple of this dude, some Greg Chapman, I think his name is. A couple different coaches have books out there, but none of them are really principles to help you improve in CrossFit. Here's what to do. Here's a program. And here's what you can expect of the program. Here's how each thing should work. But I thought that's what it was going to be. But then almost immediately reading into it and the brevity of the chapters and the brevity of the sections where it was just his anecdotes that he had from the games, from training, from his background. And then there seemed to be no real linear order to it. So it really wasn't a autobiography at all. There would be examples from 2015 and the next section would be from 2020, and it would just kind of be bouncing back and forth to kind of fit in the chapter of strength and fit in the chapter of endurance. So the book really wasn't a training book, I wouldn't say, the way that I would expect it to be. And it also really wasn't an autobiography the way that they're typically written as well. So it's unlike any book I've ever read, but I'm not sure if it worked.
It was a good first go. I mean, it was an entertaining read. But yeah, as far as like the takeaways, I don't know if either of us got what we were initially expecting. It would have been nice if there was like, yeah, Training Manual would have been pretty sweet, even though it was for CrossFit. It's like there's crossover principles, you know, being more from the endurance side of things, more from the obstacle course racing side of things. But yeah, there were still some other takeaways.
There were certainly some takeaways, and so let's get into some of those. Like, what were some of the things that you liked about the book?
Oh, let me tell you. There was a surplus of it. I mean, I'm super glad I read this book, and it was definitely worth my time. Just from an entertainment standpoint alone, sometimes it's nice to kind of get out of your field. If you're you know, a runner, reading something that's not sciencey, whether it's, you know, it's fiction or it is just a different sport, you know, a different athlete. It was kind of just refreshing to kind of step out and get a perspective from someone who's doing something differently. And I did get that. But what I did really like was the fact that there was a decent amount of the story to like where he got to. It was an easy read. It was a super easy read. As much as I would like love philosophy and would love to hear like deeper philosophies and like more detail the hardships of his life, the fact that it was super simple made it, just made it easy to kind of breeze through.
I agree with that. I kind of like his voice as a writer. You know, you could tell it was definitely from him. If you listen to podcasts or listen to interviews with him, it sounded like him, but it did make it easy to read. It made it relatable, with not very much detail, because ultimately he seems like sort of a humble, private person. And from what my takeaways of this book, and it was kind of dipping into some things that he wanted to give away about himself, but it wasn't, it doesn't seem like he was fully ready to give like these deep details about his life and his upbringing. But there were spots in the back of the back half of the book, which I did like, the back 2 chapters about the mentality and the recovery piece, that did talk a lot more about his personal experiences as just like a human being, which I thought was really nice. So he seemed like he kind of warmed up to the idea of giving the reader a little bit more, which I did like that as well. I really liked the competition tips. This was something that this could have been the whole book, really. And if it was and maybe that was his idea, is like, I held all these things close to my chest my entire career, and now I'm just going to tell everybody like what I would do in competition to give myself a slight edge. Like, he had things, that one example of where one workout at the games, you had to go from square to square doing overhead squats. So I think it was like 6 overhead squats. Then you had to move to the next square and do 6 more overhead squats. So he would just walk where most athletes would stand right in the middle and then like drop the bar and roll it front and then do a whole clean, do the whole thing. He would walk all the way to the front of the box, do his sets, and then take like 1 step into the next box and then start again. So just like ways that he was able to find places to save time, I thought was really cool. And that he was really thoughtful about that, which is just affirming from an athlete standpoint that those things matter when you're looking at the best athlete in the world, and he's figuring out any type of edge he can have. And it's not just, he's just so much more talented, that he actually does think about this a lot, and he really truly cares about the competition piece. So I really like that. So I bet there's about a dozen nuggets like that throughout the book, sprinkled in from a competitor standpoint, that I really enjoyed. One thing that I really liked too was how he spoke about how he developed his endurance, and how he wasn't really an endurance athlete by any means. Like, to you and I, Josh, like as endurance athletes, this just is almost common sense. Like, hey, like figure out what kind of intensity you need to be at a lower level so you can do a lot more work. So he spoke about sitting on a concept 2 quite a bit, and actually how he did use like the heart function, or the heart rate test. He did a heart rate test and figure out his zone so he could sit on the bike and really be intentional about his work, which is what we do every day. But CrossFitters straight up ignore that. They just never. And even like in the hybrid space, like people doing high rocks or DECA like to be too intense, where, you know, he was doing 90 minutes of monostructural work because that's what he needed to do to build his aerobic system.
Yeah, that was probably my favorite chapter, especially as far as like direct applicability, like the ability to extract and extrapolate like for our sport, was the chapter about endurance and like working with Hinshaw. Whether it was like the breathing, which was like taking in some really sharp breaths to help you get air in really, really quickly when you're under duress, which actually was really similar to Wim Hof, by the way.
Right.
The whole like 30 breath thing. And then, yeah, doing heart rate training. It's like, oh, even though these guys are anaerobic machines, they were still focusing on like zone 2, easy aerobic, threshold work. So,
and I think that's
appreciated that.
I think that's why he became the athlete that he became, and like because of that endurance work. And each one of the chapters kind of digs into like how he was able to pull the sport apart so that he could figure out what he needed to do to be the best at that one specific, at the best at endurance, the best at strength, the best at coordination, as he called it, the best at speed. So that's where those like little nuggets are throughout the chapter. And I appreciated those pieces. Anything else that you liked?
Yeah, dude, for sure. I mean, yeah, the whole headshot chapter, the strategy. I mean, how he endlessly looked for advantages throughout the competition and how he would be quiet about them. He paid so much attention, and that was actually one of the biggest takeaways for me, was how much he looked into the little things. Because even if it is just a few seconds, the mental boost that you get from knowing that you are attacking this ferociously, mentally and physically, it's like I feel like that sets the stage for you to do better in the competition from a confidence standpoint, which is huge. So I think it goes beyond the few seconds that you think you're saving. And I think that having that mindset and being in that mental place, knowing that you are more prepared than anyone else, I think that actually does translate to you physically performing a little bit better. And in obstacle course racing, there's so much room for that. Because it's an obstacle course, there's a lot of different techniques. There's a lot of there's a lot of strategy depending on the type of course. So you can always pay more attention to that, I'm sure. And then the mental sharpness training, that was something I also really like, because I know I can get race brained pretty hard, where I just kind of forget to do something. So he would do these hard workouts and then set it so that, like, he would do intervals on the track. And instead of doing EMOM, he would do like 58 seconds, so that he would have to do math on the fly when he's fatigued to figure out when his next interval starts and stops. And then like during a set of, like, he would do Fran, and then between the bar, he would make himself do something silly, like go over and touch his chalk bag in between it. He doesn't have to do that, but he does it. He just like makes a rule, just like they would tell you a rule before the event. It's like, I have to remember this rule when I'm under duress.
And that's one of those little things, those like low profile things, like that doesn't sound like where most athletes would be interested in what the actual workout was. He's doing these little things in the workout to make sure that it's going to translate onto the competition floor. I agree with you. That was really cool hearing how he was able to mentally challenge himself as well as physically, so that he'd be the most prepared.
Yeah, and also from that mental standpoint, his mental strength was probably his biggest asset, honestly, because like, the body's going to follow the mind. You have to make decisions, and then you put it into action. But I mean, he would have these challenges occur, and his ability to accept them and move on and not carry that baggage and not carry that stress and not let it weigh him down and fatigue him and keep him up at night so he can get good rest for the next competition. A lot of value in that.
So what were some things that you did not necessarily like about the book?
There was two. Actually, I took this one to heart. There was one chapter. They just kind of like sprinkled in recipes and sprinkled in workouts kind of throughout the book, almost at random to a certain degree. But there was one called toddler training, and it was a bastardized version of a Turkish getup.
Oh, really? I didn't even. What was it? I must have just skipped right over that one.
You're like, I don't need toddler training. I'm going past this. What is this? It doesn't even look like anything. It was a Turkish getup, but it was in the diagram. They showed you like 4 phases when there's actually several more.
A million.
There's several phases in the Turkish getup with like windshield wiper in your leg, blah, blah, blah. So it was like an inadequate instruction on how to do a TGU. And they called it toddler training. I'm like, just call it a Turkish getup, So I took that to heart. And then just like all the recipes. Yeah, I could have done with a little bit less, but that was me being selfish. It broke the book up. It added thickness to the physical book, and I'm sure they're delicious, but I wasn't in it for the food, man.
No, I actually hated the recipes. I thought it was absolutely just filler. There was I didn't even look at like what were there? There was a section in the coordination part that was eating for coordination. That's what I was like, this is just made up. This is absolutely just filler.
Bro, just put caffeine.
Right. And so like, I know his wife, Sammy, does have a business called Feeding the Frasers that like, okay, great. And this might've been a way to shine light on that, but it's like, that's not why. I can't imagine anybody got this book expecting to get recipes out of it. So
food looks great, but like the time that goes into that, unless you have a personal chef like Sammy, kind of
no, like that's a cookbook. Release a cookbook. I didn't, and it was just filler. I would just get to it and it would just, whoop, I would just swipe right past it. I'm with you. I really didn't like the random workouts. I didn't think that they're going to be beneficial at all. There was nothing about like why, like there was a little bit about why you would do them, I guess. Like he would give an example about maybe a place where he succeeded or a place where he failed, and then would give a workout that, and then explain that how that workout would then prepare him better for the next event or something like that. But then there was just random stuff sprinkled in with no explanation as to when to do it, how to feel during it.
Like, nothing about the physiology.
Nothing. There was absolutely no technical aspect to this book in any respect. So from a training book, it's a huge hit for that. To me, it would almost be better if this was a 10-part podcast series or a 10-part YouTube series where it was just like, here's something that I was going through. Here's some workouts that I did, and like showing the actual workouts, because if it's not going to be technical, like why they work or what they're doing, like then I don't even understand what the point is in putting them in there, because you can get workouts anywhere. And the workouts aren't different than any other CrossFit workout that you would have ever see anywhere, right? You can go on wadwell.com, I think it's called, and it's just thousands of CrossFit workouts. So if you want CrossFit workouts, like they exist. They don't need to just be like the formula is what's valuable. And we got none of that. We got absolutely none of that throughout the book. So like, I still have no real understanding of what a CrossFit athlete can or would do to be the best in the world outside of just like the competition stuff. It really gave nothing on that end of things.
So Rich, how are you going to apply? You're going to apply any of those workouts to your routine?
So, I mean, there were some EMOM examples that I liked that I think will be good for hybrid racing. But outside of that, no. Did you see anything where you're like, okay, cool, this is a workout that I never thought would be
Hinshaw's
interesting to
VO2
do?
max intervals. I was already like looking to do 200s for speed, but them doing 200 100s, and like that was another thing I appreciated. Be right on the pace. Don't try and do 35 seconds, hit 38 seconds, keep hitting 38 seconds, and so just that kind of workout. That was super applicable for an obstacle course racer.
I was hoping it would be like that for every one of the workouts. If it was like a 15-minute AMRAP, heart rate should be here, like RPE should be this, or like because we want to get XYZ. And it just wasn't that at all. It was literally just, here's a workout that I've done. Like
him and his publisher are going to watch this review and be like, all right, copy number 2.
Read it. Well, that's another thing. It seems like he's about a decade away from being a coach, because he's not really a coach. He's just starting to be a coach now that he's out of the business, out of the competition. And he either just didn't take the time to understand the why behind things, or he just doesn't know. And so like it's not very helpful. I didn't think it was very helpful.
All right. That said, we have a rating system. We're going to rate this book. We're going to rate it out of the amount of beer tickets we think that it deserves. It's out of 5.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll go first. I'm going to rate it overall. We could have done it like Audible, where, there's like the story, and then there's like, the meat of the topic, and like, do you recommend, blah, blah, blah. There's different stars. We'll just do one to kind of cross the board.
Maybe we'll get a formula down the road where we can break it out. But right now, straight up score.
Cheers. I'm going to give this one a 3.9 out of 5 beer tickets. And that's mostly for the story. And I feel like I got a lot out of the whole mental aspect of it, but it was lacking that extra 1.1 for a perfect score due to the lack of applicable training structure.
Very solid score. 3.9 drink tickets. I gave this a 2.75 drink tickets out of 5. Ooh. I was unimpressed. I was unimpressed. very much. I mean, like, I'm glad that I read it because of some of the takeaways on the competition stuff. But it's more affirming than enlightening from that perspective. And it didn't give us anything more than a 3-hour Joe Rogan podcast, in my opinion. It was just simply the information that we could have already known was there. Nothing in my life has changed about how I'm going to train or do anything because of this book. So, and it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't either an autobiography or a training book. So for that reason, 2.75 drink tickets.
2.75. Respect it.
Yep. All right. Well, that'll wrap us up. That is our first book review here. Hard Work Pays Off by Mat Fraser. Get yours. All right, so there you have it. That's our book review of Mat Fraser's book, Hard Work Pays Off. Drop some comments down below if you agree with us, if you disagree with us, if you liked it, if you didn't like it. I want to hear about it. Plus, hit us with a like and a subscribe if you want to get more content like this coming your way. And again, if you wish to help support the athletes here at TORC, we would love that on a subscription basis or a one-time fee. You can do that right down below with our Ko-Fi, coffee, whatever it's called, link down below. So until next time, we'll talk to you soon.